what's up, guys? Welcome back to Bible Fun with the Nuns. And today we're studying Daniel chapter 3. Let's jump right in.
Okay. Daniel chapter number 3 is it's one of the best stories, right? So we got Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We got the fiery furnace. We got King Nebuchadnezzar. We got lots of intrigue. We got these three guys going into the fiery furnace. It's so hot that the guys who throw them in end up burning up. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they don't even smell like they've been in a fire. And you look, sometimes, like, have you ever been to the Waffle House or something, and you leave the Waffle House and you go, I smell like the Waffle House. Well, look, if you can smell like the Waffle House just by walking in the Waffle House, but Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego can't smell like the fire even though they've been in the furnace, something has happened. You also have a couple of other things going on. You have the appearance of this fourth figure in the fire, this angel in the fire. And there is good speculation out there that this is what we would call a Christophany. And here's what that means. This is a before Bethlehem appearance of Jesus. That when these guys get thrown in the fire, who's the God who walks around with them and was like, hey man, you're okay, I got you? It's Jesus. Now, was it Jesus? I think so, but I'm okay if I get to heaven and he goes, no, that was just an angel. I'm okay with that. It doesn't bother me, but I do think it's Jesus. Now let me tie this together a little bit. So in chapter 2, the king had a dream, and he had a dream about a giant statue. And the statue, that's what I'm going to preach about Sunday, by the way, it had a head made out of gold, which represented Nebuchadnezzar. It had a chest and arms made out of silver, which represented the Medes and the Persians who were going to defeat him. It had a belly made out of bronze, which represented the Greeks and Alexander the Great. It had legs made out of iron, which symbolized the Empire of Rome, because they had an Eastern and a Western kind of capital, and they were strong, but they were weak at their core, okay? You'll notice in that statue that the metals, from gold to iron, the metals get stronger from the top to the bottom. So it starts with weak gold, and it ends with strong iron. But the metals get less valuable from top to bottom. So gold is more valuable. So it's like things look like they're getting stronger, but they're actually getting less valuable. It's interesting to think that when Daniel gives King Nebuchadnezzar the interpretation of the dream, he said, you, O king, are the head of gold. Now we're in chapter 3. And in chapter 3, the king himself has built a giant what?
Statue.
Like the vision he saw in chapter 2. Well, what's the statue made out of?
Gold.
So the king said, I don't just want to be the head of gold. I want to be the everything. And so now you've got Nebuchadnezzar, who is a man who he deals with a lot of pride. Okay, now that's going to get him in trouble later in the book. But his pride is what drives him in this story. And it's a little bit about what we've been talking about so far. Now, Jeb, you had the main takeaway from this. What kind of was it?
So my takeaway was how, wait, hold on. That God is with you no matter what you're going through, and you can always count on him.
Okay. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were threatened that they were going to die. Thrown in a pit or thrown in a fiery furnace. Did God ever give up on them?
No.
Hey, listen, were they willing? Because this is one of my favorite stories, because they said, King, we don't have to even think about this. They said, we will not bow down to idols, because remember, commandment number 2 was you will have no graven images, no idols. They said, we would rather die than break that commandment. The king says, well, have it your way. And so here's what they said. They said, we will go into the fire and our God is able to protect us. But even if he doesn't, we are not going to give up. See, here's the deal. There's a lot of people in life that are willing to talk a big game, but once the pressure comes, they'll fold a little bit. They'll go, well, if it's just once. Not Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. By the way, these are the same guys from chapter 1 who put their lives on the line not eating the king's food. That's when they were young men. Now they're middle-aged men. Well, listen, how did they get to the point where they were ready to die? Well, it's because early in their lives they made a commitment that they were going to live for the Lord. And so they just matured in their faith. But I'm also on board with this. This is not just the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and their growth. This is also the story of Nebuchadnezzar's growth. Because we're watching him have experiences with God from chapter 2 and now chapter 3, and we'll keep going with him a little bit. And we watch kind of, what does his spiritual life look like? John, that was a little bit of your takeaway. What you got?
Okay, so my takeaway was how basically immediately when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, immediately after they come out of the furnace, Nebuchadnezzar's like, what the heck? Okay, what just happened? And then, so basically he's like, okay, now everybody, instead of bowing down to my statue and me, basically, you're gonna go and bow down to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's God, and whoever doesn't do that is basically gonna, get in trouble and stuff. So basically, immediately after this, so basically, through all that, Nebuchadnezzar, he had a little bit of a change in heart. But, so we don't think he's a true believer yet because, so you see, Nebuchadnezzar, he's had multiple different encounters with God, right. And such as this one, and, the eating of the food.
The dream in chapter 2?
The dream.
Yeah.
So even though he may have, said, he may have agreed with that and like that God. I'm saying
he did acknowledge that the God of Daniel and the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was the powerful God. So he did have these highs, but what did he also have?
He had a bunch of lows, and it was kind of on and off and on and off. And so what you see about a true believer and a true Christian is that if you want to see if they're actually committed, you can't just look at today, you can't just look at yesterday, you have to look at their whole entire life. And so yeah,
I agree. So one of the things we talked about was we don't look at the fruit of a person. So John said, well, do we think Nebuchadnezzar was a believer? Because at the end of chapter 2 and now at the end of chapter 3, he's like, hey, these guys, God, he's the real God. Well, is he a believer? Here's the deal. We don't inspect the fruit in a person's life by just one day. Anybody can have a good day. Anybody can have a bad day. Anybody can have a high or a low or an up or a down or a hot or a cold. So here's what we do. We examine fruit over a lifetime. I think that there's a good case to be made that Nebuchadnezzar did become a believer. But I think it's much later. It's after he basically turns into a werewolf, and we'll get into that later. What? Yeah, it's a weird story. So, but it's over the long course. So highs and lows, dramatic highs and lows. I mean, he's building idols for people to worship. That doesn't sound like a believer, right? So we look at the long haul. So here's the deal. If you looked at the long haul of your life, are you bearing fruit? The kind of fruit Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are developing. Fruit where they said, we are so committed to the Lord our God, we are willing to get in that furnace, trusting he'll protect us if he wants to, but if he doesn't, he's still good and he's still God. I think that's kind of where we look at the story. All right, we hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you in the next chapter tomorrow. All right, bye.